All right, and we're back with another Mary Truth Talks. I am your host, Marianne, and this is the MTT Show. So, before we begin, Truth Seekers, thank you so much for subscribing, for supporting. Those out there who are haters, I love you too, because you guys are the ones who engage the most on those comments. So, keep engaging. Now, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and X, Mary_Truth. That's Mary_Truths. And I have officially hit my new goal of 10,000 followers on Instagram. So thank you so much for those who followed. If you haven't, go follow me on Instagram. Please. I don't go live there, but I post every day. So anything you want to know, you can go and find me there. So there's a lot to talk about, and I'm like really far away from the mic. Can you hear me better now?
You're fine.
Okay. I don't know. I feel like it was too far away. So before I begin, I'm always saying that we have a wellness company, and if you are willing to invest in yourself mentally and physically, join the community on our Patreon account. Now, I want to go a little deep into that because today I'm going to talk about some conspiracy things that I believe correlate with MBE. So MBE stands for Mind Body Elevation. It is a wellness company that we are cultivating on a daily basis because we believe that in order for our lives to elevate, we have to elevate our mind and body. And that means connecting both those two things together. The wellness community is not really a thing. When you think about wellness, you think about fitness, and fitness is just about the body, not about the mind. And when you think about the mind, is just meditation, and there is no linking it to the body. So we are advocates of both. You need to have both to elevate your life. But it's not just about elevating your life. It's about becoming aware. Awareness is everything. Consciousness is everything. That's the reason why I do this, is because I truly believe in order for us to not allow the propaganda to brainwash us, we have to be aware. And consciousness can only be manifested if we focus on both the mind and body as a team, as a unit, as a union, not as two separate entities, because they're not. It is the same thing. Now, why am I bringing this up? It's not just because I want you guys to actually invest in yourself and join the community. That's obviously, a benefit to us and to yourself as well. But it's also because it's not just about cultivating the community, but if you are overweight or obese, you are easily manipulated mentally because you allow food to consume you. Okay? If you are underweight, it is essentially the same thing except the opposite. You're not eating enough, so you're not grounded in reality. Food grounds us. Food is a root to this earth. I don't know if anybody ever has fasted, anybody who follows me, but when you fast, you realize how grounding food really is. You also treat food as something spiritual, not just something physical. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because when you start analyzing that your mind and body is something spiritual, because it goes back to consciousness, then more things that have to do with politics, you start to view things differently. And I'm going to kind of unwind on that. So I'm going to hit really quick the Epstein stuff first. I'm not even going to go into like per bracket like I usually do, because I want you guys to understand where I'm coming from here with the whole consciousness thing. So I've been thinking a lot about the Epstein file stuff. A lot of people have been talking about it. It's so much information. You don't know what to believe. I mean, you don't really know what's true and what isn't true, because nothing is really vetted. Nothing is verified. It's just a lot of tips, a lot of allegations. You don't really know what the heck is going on. However, I do have to start to fathom, well, I saw this movie recently called, what was the movie called we saw? The human trafficking movie? Only Hope, or
Still Hope.
Still Hope. If you haven't seen it, go watch it, because you are actually helping nonprofits who fight against human trafficking. You're investing in them to do it. The producers, they're not making any money off of this movie. It's strictly for nonprofits. So we watched that movie, and it made me, I started to think, well, a lot of the Epstein stuff is coming out, and during different presidencies, aside, except Trump's, and I'm making that very clear, except Trump's, there's been policies, immigration policies, that has allowed children to cross the border and they go missing after they cross the border. So I start to think, well, I'm not saying that politicians are human traffickers or they're pedophiles. I'm not insinuating that. I'm just saying I find it odd that we are allowing policies that incentivize human trafficking. Because if you allow a bunch of children to cross the border with unvetted parents or guardians, then you are only saying to the people that are in that disgusting business, you can do business with this country because we're allowing loopholes for you to do it. So I started thinking about that because that movie came out and the Epstein stuff is out, and the Epstein stuff is essentially about human trafficking with elites involved. A couple months ago, there was a CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch, a very well-known clothing store, who was charged for human trafficking. He was a part of a human trafficking ring. So it's not surprising that perhaps people that are CEOs of companies or public figures or celebrities could be involved in disgusting, depraved activities such as human trafficking or pedophilia, because we already have evidence of that with the CEO that was charged, that was apparently nobody knew, but there was that he was involved in a ring, a pedophile ring. And then not too long ago in the Grammys, Nicki Minaj, I think this was last week, tweets about how a bunch of celebrities are part of a satanic ritual. Super random, out of left field. So then you start thinking, when you are focusing on your mind and body, I'm linking all this together, I'm doing the weave. When you are connecting your mind and body and you're conscious of what you eat, how you think, what you do, you start to understand different current events and how they can maybe connect with each other. In the 90s, there was this, they called it the satanic, what was it called? Panic. The what? The satanic panic, where even Oprah Winfrey had a show. I don't know if we can find it. It's okay if we can, don't even try, because I'm sure it's like buried in there. She had a show where she had women that were survivors of being part of satanic rituals or family members that were in that world. And this was, according to, at least in that time, this was a real thing that was happening. But then after the 90s, the media just stopped reporting on it. All right? I'm not done. I'm connecting different things. I'm not alleging anything. I'm just connecting different things, because when you're conscious, you can do those things. And then we recently found out that there's a plaque in Minnesota of satanic worshipers thanking Tim Waltz for allowing the spread of Satanism. So then you have to start fathoming, you have to start thinking, well, I mean, isn't it weird that that's even happening in a government building. And then at the same time, you have a public figure like Nicki Minaj claiming that there's celebrities that are practicing satanic rituals. And then at the same time, we had a lot of children go missing a couple years ago because of open border policies. And then at the same time, we have actual Satanist survivors talk about it in the 90s, and then it just went silent. So you have to start to think about, well, I mean, perhaps there's something to this. Perhaps the Epstein files is just kind of bringing this up to light again because we have forgotten about this. And I think that maybe it's time we question whether there are certain religions that are actual religions. I think that any religion that hurts yourself or hurts others is not really a religion. And we should start having that conversation. I'm not saying that, that is Satanism. I'm just saying, it just happens to be that religion that is being spoken about. And it's linked to, human sacrifices and so on. So I think that there's something to this. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not making any statements, anything definitive. I'm not claiming anybody's a pedophile or a human trafficker. I am just saying I think it's odd that all these things are happening all at once in a very short amount of time. That's all I'm saying. And if you are connected to your mind and body and you are a conscious observer, I think you understand where I'm coming from. Okay? Just read between the lines. Okay. So speaking of human trafficking, let's watch this video that they just found a ring in California. Let's take a look at that really quick.
A large part of the operation taking place right here in LA County, considered a hotbed for human trafficking.
Among the victims, teenagers from all over the country, some as young as 13. And now it is News reporter Sid Garcia is live in downtown LA with all the details. Sid.
It's the 12th year in a row that this task force has been going after human traffickers. And in this latest one that happened about a week and a half ago, they made hundreds of arrests.
Human trafficking and child exploitation are devastating crimes.
The last week of January, local, state, and federal law enforcement teams went out to pick up solicitors and providers of young girls and boys involved in sex trafficking. They call it Operation Reclaim and Rebuild. Statewide, more than 600 arrests were made. 156 adults and 14 children were rescued from the streets of LA and up and down the state. The task force also confiscated several weapons in their week-long sting. Young girls and boys given a second chance to reclaim and rebuild their lives.
Survivors need care. They need time. They need a chance to rebuild their lives. And our partnerships with these organizations are what allows those individuals to reclaim their lives and rebuild their lives.
There's a number of service organizations the deputy chief alluded to that help the victims of human trafficking start over and rebuild their lives. These groups work hand in hand with law enforcement to help survivors of human trafficking. Sarah Elender is with Saving Innocence.
Because together we create something far greater than the sum of all of our parts. A unified and collective, collaborative response to meet survivors just where they are with just what they need.
Right now, those involved in human trafficking of a minor face a felony. For the trafficking of an adult, it's a misdemeanor.
So I would ask our state leaders who actually created the felony dealing with minors involved with human sex trafficking to also go ahead and make it all of human sex trafficking is a violent and serious offense.
All right, that's it. So I stand with what I said. I mean, again, not making any directives to anybody. I am just saying, isn't it weird that we have politicians who make human trafficking for adults a misdemeanor? Isn't that odd? I think it's common sense to then create a law that is like standard across the board, that all human trafficking is a felony, period. Doesn't matter whether you're an adult or a child. Doesn't matter what gender you are. it's a felony. So then you have to question why. And then again, I'm going to emphasize the only president who made a dent in this disgusting, demonic, evil business called human trafficking was Donald J. Trump, the 45th and 47th president of the United States of America. I want to make that very clear to those who claim that this man is a pedophile. If that's true, why on earth would he do something like stop the human trafficking on the border by closing the border his first and second term? That's what we have to question. And I think it's very unfortunate that we have people who unfortunately don't want to question because they want to believe whatever narrative they want to believe instead of question the narrative that the media is pushing. It's a media pushing this narrative and people are believing it. Why? Because they're not connected to their mind and body in order to be conscious observers. And I'm going to continue saying that over and over again from now on because, like I said, MBE is not just something that we're not trying to build a community, like just for the fucks of it. We're trying to build a community because we genuinely believe that the country, Americans, need to become aware of everything. Because if we're not aware, human trafficking will continue to exploit children, women, little boys, men, etc. Let's continue on here. Speaking of the president, he declines to apologize for a racist joke that was involved with Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, but that was not the entire joke. However, let's take a look at this. I think it's Cuomo and somebody else who I don't know her name, but let's watch that really quick and then we'll watch the president.
All right, let's talk about the Obama monkey video. It wasn't an accident.
It was an
a
ape,
mistake,
which is way stronger than a monkey.
There
Just
are
saying.
a lot of Democrats in the extended video. You use a quick clip of Obama and his wife as monkeys, you know what message it sends, and you know it is wrong. And whoever was a part of it should be exposed and disposed of. Of course, the president doesn't take the blame. Of course, they took it down. The message was sent and received. And of course, his mouthpiece tries to put the blame on the rest of us. This is from an internet meme video depicting President Trump as the king of the jungle and Democrats as characters from The Lion King. Please stop the fake outrage. Fake outrage? Tell that to Senator Tim Scott. He posted this was the most racist thing he's ever seen out of the White House. Interesting choice of words.
Tim Scott got over it after he
racist,
spoke to Trump.
As opposed to the only racist thing he's ever seen
Just
out
saying.
of the White House. Scott apparently called the president, asked him to remove the video, and then Trump deleted it. Because if you don't want people to accuse you of being racist, guess what? Don't do things.
They were
like
already
this,
accusing him of that beforehand.
Now,
I don't think that makes a difference.
Have not responded to the video. I'm not surprised. Instead, the president put out a message to America's athletes on the night of the opening ceremony of the Olympics. So all the athletes, we're proud of you, we're with you, saying all the right things instead of getting down in the mud.
Oh,
Good
Cuomo,
move.
you
Someone
haven't
can
left
still
your
take the high road.
leftist views.
Because
You just left CNN.
president said moments ago he didn't make a mistake by posting the video. He only watched the first part of the video, which was about voter fraud, and he gave it to his people, and they didn't watch the whole thing. I argue that the first part of the video should be just as embarrassing for him as the end of the video is obviously offensive, but what comes before it is the real story that motivated the bigotry in the first place. See, while it's good that some Republicans are saying, oh, you shouldn't have Obama as a monkey. Oh, great.
It was an
But they're
ape.
not saying anything about what came before it. This absurdist nonsense about the 2020 election, conspiracies that have been debunked. Before the 2-second monkey
I look
crap,
forward to that
58
being
seconds of
proven
absurd,
incorrect. I want to see
baseless
what
conspiracies.
gymnastics
They
he
don't
says
even
after
mention
that. That's going to be
Why
great.
would you put this
That's gonna
BS
be
with the
great.
monkey BS? Here's my take.
Why does he keep saying
The
monkey? It's a
president
fucking ape.
believes that the kind of person who would believe the nonsense that he's putting out about the last election being rigged would be amused, would enjoy depicting the black president and his wife as monkeys. In
How
other
was it
words,
nonsense?
the joke
You don't
is
have
not
any
on the
proof that it
Obamas.
wasn't rigged.
The president is actively making a monkey out of you.
God,
Now,
these
the guy in
people
the
are
video
something
is
else,
retired
man.
Army Colonel Phil Waldron, an Army-trained spook in psychological influence operations, PSYOPs. He circulated a 38-page PowerPoint back in 2020 to the members of Congress, to the White House. He had
All
all
right,
these
can you get to
meetings
the
with
part where
Trumpers
like he's talking
arguing
to
that they
this
should
lady?
declare
Like, get to the part where he's talking to some lady. There you go.
herself.
Thanks.
Good to have you. Happy Friday.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me.
So-
Good to see you. Happy Friday.
What does this mean? Not so much the monkey business. What does
It's a fucking
this
ape!
intense messaging
Oh my God.
that the elections were rigged mean
Bro, I
about
swear to
the
God, they should have
disposition
like
towards the
told him it's an
midterms
ape.
for the
It's not a
administration?
monkey.
Well, first, I think it's really important to point out that the outrage over the depiction at the end of a scroll video, which then automatically went to another video, was not vindictive in nature. Was it a mistake? Yes. Did it cause a problem for the White House all day today? Yes. Is the president upset about it? And there's new reporting out tonight
That shit was funny
there
as
are a
hell,
number
bro.
of
These
White
people
House
are
staffers
tripping.
who are upset that this occurred because of the narrative all day was not on the fact that last night President Trump announced Trump RX, which means that medication prices are going to go down for Americans because Europeans now are going to pay their fair share when it comes to it comes to investment in drugs and the ROD that comes into the research of those drugs. We're going to be subsidizing Europeans anymore for our medication. They're not talking about the Dow that hit an all-time high today. They had that
The Benghazi
press conference
arrest.
from the Department of Justice by Benghazi, exactly, where they brought justice after 14 years for
Yeah,
four
that was
Americans
crazy
who were
about
killed
that. That was pretty
in
cool
that
that they
attack.
did that.
And so, yes, it was not handled the best way. They should have immediately investigated it and realized that it was an automatic scroll into a video, which, as you did play, depicted a number of people and animals. Is it silly? Yes. But was it
It's hilarious.
vindictive? And does it classify the President of the United States as a racist? No. And I think if you look at his policies, people in his cabinet, the people who have visited
it is
the
a
White House,
racist joke,
including
but who
Nicki
gives a
Minaj
shit?
recently, to call him a racist or to imply that he is one based on that video is very disingenuous and lacking context.
I mean, if he's racist, what the hell does Biden? What is Biden? Biden.
Because
Biden
let me tell you
historically is a
something. If you don't want
racist,
somebody
and he was voted
to call you
in.
that, then you don't do things like this. He didn't show Biden and everybody else. They just showed the Obama part. So it doesn't matter what it clicks and
But it
scrolls
wasn't.
to.
But they
This
didn't
is-
do it on
this
purpose,
is an unforced
Chris, which
error.
is the issue.
All right,
Why is
that's
an
it. That's
unforced error?
it.
But
That's it.
very
We get
different
it. She's saying that it wasn't done on purpose. He's saying that we shouldn't have been done. It doesn't matter. It already happened. All right. So what I think is very like hypocritical is that the person we had as president before Trump was a legitimate racist. He literally passed a crack bill, literally, because it has to do with prosecuting people that consumed crack. And it was mainly blacks. And because of that bill that was passed into law, thanks to Joe Biden, dozens of black men were incarcerated. That's just one of his bills. He also was buddy-buddy with an actual segregationist, a publicly known segregationist. There's many things that he said when he was in his younger years in Senate and in Congress that were blatantly racist. He also said when he was running for office, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. Meaning, because I'm a Democrat, you got to vote for me because, we're your slave masters and you got to vote for us. So, I mean, yeah, was it racist? For sure. But it was fucking funny. It was a funny ass racist joke. And I don't understand what's the big deal. Don't you guys believe in the First Amendment right? I mean, you clearly you think it's perfectly fine for Don Lemon to, claim his First Amendment right when he literally violated a bunch of people's freedom of religion. So it's okay for Don Lemon to violate people's freedom of religion by storming into a church while they're worshiping their God with a bunch of other people. But it's not okay for maybe the president, maybe not the president, it doesn't really matter, to do their First Amendment right. You can say, well, that's the president. It doesn't matter. He's a human being and he has a right to act on his First Amendment. Whether it's racist or bigot, doesn't matter. It's his right to do so. Just like it was people's right to vote for a legitimate, historically bigoted, racist man like Joe Biden. And y'all still voted for him. So I don't understand why there is such a bias between one party versus another. In fact, let me go a little deeper here. I think it's really racist when there's a bunch of white liberals protesting against ICE, unlawfully protesting against ICE, better said, and because it's a black ICE agent, they call him the hard R N-word. That's racist. I think it's racist that a bunch of white liberals think that because you're black, you're too stupid to use a computer or get an ID. I think that's racist. So why is it that when the left actually thinks racist as fuck when it comes to blacks, that's perfectly fine. Democrats don't say jack. But when the president of the United States or his staffer does a racist joke, because again, it's a First Amendment right to do a racist joke like any other comedian would, that is unacceptable. I lost my voice. That is unacceptable, and they should remove it. I don't think he should have removed it. I got pissed as hell on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram, Mayor_Truths. I got pissed as hell. I think it was weak to have removed it. He should have left it on there, because at the end of the day, he's not apologizing. So why the fuck did you delete it if you're not going to apologize? Doesn't make sense. Who gives a damn what Tim Scott thinks? Like, you offended, bro? Sucks to suck. I'm not calling you an ape. It was supposed to be a joke. Everybody in that bitch was an animal. Like, I don't understand. So, to me, I just strongly believe, very simple. If one party can do it, the other party can do it. Period. If you want to bitch and moan and complain about Donald Trump being a bigot racist, then why the hell didn't you do that when Biden was running for office? Why didn't you talk all that smack about Biden when he was running for office? Because it didn't fit the narrative. So let's watch him deny that he should apologize.
A number of Republicans are calling on you to apologize for that post. Is that something you're going to do?
No, I didn't make a mistake. I mean, I look at a lot of.
Then you shouldn't have erased it.
I looked at the beginning of it. It was fine.
Do you condemn the racist parts of the video?
Of course I do. I liked the beginning. I saw it and just passed it on. And I guess probably nobody reviewed the end of it, because what I saw at the beginning was really, really strong. It was about fraudulent elections. And anytime I see that stuff, and when it's credible, you put it up. But somebody slipped and missed a very small part. Now, by the way, again, the takeoff one, I guess, I didn't do it, by the way. This was done by somebody else. This was a retruth. That was not done by us.
You frequently criticize Joe Biden for not knowing what is going on in his name. This racist video that was posted on your social media.
I know a hell of a lot better than you do. You don't know what's going on. I know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, he got pissed there at the end, but it is what it is. All right, so, I mean, that was a really stupid question, but, I mean, because Joe Biden literally did not know what was going on. That's why most of his executive orders are with an auto pen. So he literally did not know what was going on. And it shows with all the executive orders that were done under his administration. So, speaking of fraudulent voting, let's talk about that. Democrats refused to vote for voter ID, which is, in my opinion, racist. All right, let's go.
The SAVE Act is an abomination. It's Jim Crow 2.0 across the country. We are going to do everything we can to stop it.
Complete lie. This legislation is anything but Jim Crow 2.0. And the concept of photo ID to vote is actually very popular. Don't take my word for it. Even fake news CNN admitted it has bipartisan support and it crosses all demographics. Take a listen.
What are we talking about here? So take a look here. Favor voter ID to vote. Look, I got all this polling on the screen going back since 2018. You'll notice on all of it, it's all north of 75%, 76%, 76%, 76%, 81%, and then 83% in the last year of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj. They favor photo ID to be able to vote.
This
but
girl's
even
all of a sudden irrelevant again.
71% of Democrats favor photo ID to vote. 85% of white people favor it. 82% of Latino. 76% of Black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this. Voter ID is not controversial in this country. A photo ID to vote is not controversial in this country. It is not controversial by party, and it is not controversial by race. The vast majority of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj.
The SAVE Act is
with Nicki Minaj, because she is relevant again for some reason. Well, it's not for some reason. She's relevant because she was smart enough to talk about Nigerians and being slaughtered in Nigeria, and how she's a Christian now, and then, that's how she got into the limelight again. Good for her. She knew how to slither herself in there again. So, yeah, voter ID is not, it's not racist. It's not voter suppression. That's what Democrats are marketing, which is really bad. This guy was talking about, what was he saying? Jim Crow laws. Democrats were the ones who enacted Jim Crow laws. So I think it's very rich that a Democrat is using the exact laws that they actually pushed. And it's just incredible. But the fact is, with the SAVE Act, which will probably be passed because everybody wants it. It's pretty standard across the board. Everybody thinks this is common sense legislation. All the bill is pretty much saying, in a nutshell, is when you register to vote, you need to prove that you are a citizen. And when you go and vote, you need to have an ID. That's literally what it is in a nutshell. And they're claiming that minorities, blacks, are too stupid to prove that they're American or that they're too dumb to get an ID. How is that not racist? But yet, when the president says a racist joke, he's a racist bigot. But when Democrats literally say that blacks are too stupid to get an ID, they're not racist? Get out of here, bro. I'm sorry. They are racist. They've always been racist. The founders of the KKK were Democrat. The ones who wanted to continue segregation were Democrats. The ones who created Jim Crow laws were Democrats. So I'm sorry to break it to you, but if you go back in time, those who have always been racist have always been Democrats. And you can see it in legislation. History literally tells you who is the bigot here. And it's not the right. It has always been the left. The reason why black women abort the most children is because of Democrat leadership. The reason why black families, specifically black children, are not raised with a two-parent household, meaning man and woman, is because of Democrats. So save me the bullshit, okay? Save it. The only people that are bigoted and racist here is the Democrat Party. Now, let's go on to talk about Cuba here, because we're ending the show with Cuba. I wanted to end the show quick today because I wanted to watch the satanic performance of Bad Bunny, because I do want to watch that live to have my full reaction to it for next time, or maybe even on Instagram. So follow me on Instagram. You might just see my reaction there. All right, let's go.
The humanitarian situation in Cuba is spiraling downwards as Trump is trying to choke off energy from getting to the island. To talk about this, we're going to be joined by Noah Coolwin, who is a co-host of the Blowback podcast, as well as joining us from New York, Brendan James, the other co-host of the Blowback podcast. Welcome back to the program. We're having you guys on because you just returned from Cuba.
Explain that to me.
And so we wanted to get an update on the conditions there. While you were there, I believe it was on Thursday, President Trump put out a new executive order downgrading Cuba further into the depths of evilness. Can you describe to us what Trump's new executive order is and what it would do and how it was received while you were there in Cuba?
Sure. So the situation in Cuba, for those who don't know, is that Cuba exists under the gun of an American blockade and has for decades. This limits the businesses that can do business in Cuba, and it also limits the Cuban government's ability to access basics for its citizenry.
Pause.
We're talking about...
Because I don't like propaganda, and because I'm a conscious observer, I refuse to allow that. So, what he just said was extremely misleading. So as a Cuban, let me lay down the facts. The reason why we have an embargo in Cuba is because of the dictatorship of Cuba and what they were doing to the Cuban people. That's why there's an embargo of Cuba. Because the Cuban government allowed Russia, so they were flirting with Russian government, and they allowed Russian government to pretty much be in Cuba, which was a huge threat to America because it was during the Cold War when Reagan was fighting against communism. Remember, guys? Yeah. So this guy is pretty much forgetting those little minor details that justify why there's an embargo in Cuba, okay? And also because, again, the Cuban government was, aside from the fact that they were working with Russian communists, okay, which was our nemesis at the time, well, still technically are, just we have more now. It's not just Russia, it's now China and Iran and etc. At the same time, they were oppressing their people, starving them to death, and we were pretty much trying to get them to allow people to leave Cuba. So, and I'll get more into detail about that, but I just wanted to put that in there because what he just said was super misleading and it's just just wrong. All right, so keep going.
This case, the most important being access to energy. And so this executive order that was announced last Thursday was meant to prohibit anybody from doing business with Cuba involving oil transactions. The Cuban electrical grid runs on oil. Cuba is able to generate some of its oil, but it needs, in order to keep the grid functional and to meet the needs of its 9 million or so population, it needs to import oil. And what Trump did was he targeted specifically, I mean, he didn't do it by name, but this executive order was aimed at Mexico, which in recent years has become the primary foreign supplier of Cuba's oil.
Overcame Venezuela even.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well prior to the Maduro kidnapping earlier, or last month. And so the executive order said we are going to, we're going to do nuclear tariffs on anybody who, nuclear figurative language here, not literal, nuclear tariffs on anybody who tries to sell oil to Cuba. And the purpose of this, which is very explicit, is to choke the Cuban population. It is to plunge them into darkness, to make it so that they do not have electricity, that they do not have the basic means.
Is this guy retarded? To choke the Cuban population? Bruh, choked is not even it. It's been dead a long time ago. Like dead. A long time ago. It's a ghost island, dude. What are you talking about? Choking the Cuban population. It's been dead. It's running on life support. It's on a fucking machine right now. And all we're doing is literally telling the government, unplug, bro. Unplug. Either you unplug or I will unplug you. Take your pick. All right.
I love it how they're using this like white dude as the fucking mouthpiece for the Cuban people.
None of these idiots, my Cubanness came out there, are Cuban. Isn't that amazing?
This guy knows nothing about the Cuban
life,
culture, nothing. Has a little Cuban flag pinned on his collar.
These are communist.
Bro, they just got this guy off a fucking college, fucking liberal college, and just told, hey, talk about Cuba, bro.
These are literal communists.
Here's the script, and
the fact that he's saying that shows you that he's a literal communist, because he's not saying it's the Cuban government's fault that the people of Cuba are oppressed. He's saying it's America's fault, which is exactly what the Cuban government tells its own fucking people. It says the imperialists are the reasons why you guys are starving to death, not because of us. No. It's because of them. I'm sure he's aware that before the dictatorship of Cuba was making a fuck ton of money because of the imperialism. Cuba was making so much money that it was literally, I think it was the third richest country in the Western Hemisphere. This was before Fidel Castro. They had radio stations in Cuba before we did. They allowed women to vote before we did. So what the fuck is this guy talking about? It's not the imperialism why Cuba is dead. It's because of the Cuban government why Cuba is dead. This guy's a literal communist. And if I ever get a chance to talk to these assholes, I'll say it to their fucking face, because they are communists. And and if they're not, they need to prove otherwise. Because right now it's plain as day. I'm blaming the imperialists, not the Cuban government. Okay, all right, guy. Sure, you're a commie. We can continue. Sorry, the whiskey's getting to me.
Of carrying out everyday life, and the goal of that is that it will succeed, the Americans hope, where the last 60 years of American policy has not succeeded, and that is to bring down the Cuban government.
Wow, so Bay of Pigs did not go as planned. Not successful, unfortunately. Didn't work. But I want to get, Brendan, your reaction to this clip of Trump talking about what he thinks might happen next, or what he thinks he can achieve in terms of the U.S.-Cuba relationship. Let's roll F1 here.
I want the people that came here that were horribly treated by Cuba to be taken care of, to be able to go back and do what they have to do. They have their family there. They haven't been able to see them in years, many, many years. So I think we're going to make a deal with Cuba.
He thinks he's going to squeeze Cuba into a deal that nobody else had been able to achieve before, reading between the lines of what he's saying.
He's literally the man that made the book, The Art of the Deal. So I'm pretty sure he will be able to do it.
Well, this is one of those policies that you can see right now that
compared to anybody
sort of
else,
sums up the contradictions in Trump 2. Because at the top of every statement or order or fact sheet, all of which came out with this latest move against Mexico, providing fuel to Cuba, for example, you have the declaration that this is all MAGA, this is for the national security interests of the United States, and nothing else is more important. That's the motivating factor. Yet, after that point, you notice that it's a very neocon, I would say Rubio-inflected text or policy that stresses all of these concerns for, quote unquote, the Cuban people, trying to stand up for the Cuban people, trying to protect the Cuban people, rescue the Cuban people, of course. And I'm not quite sure how one could possibly explain how rescuing the Cuban people has anything to do with the stated MAGA ideology of putting America first and American citizens first.
I can
so when
explain
Trump
that.
talks
You can
about
pause.
people being able to go,
either this is what happens when you're not conscious. So very easy. Again, Cuba used to be one of the greatest resources of sugar for America. That's what I meant to say. Thank you. I said resources, but yeah, same thing. Supplier. Also, when it came to produce, when it came to meat, when it came to fruits, when it came to tobacco, when it came to coffee, it had a lot of resources that we would buy from. And because it was so close, it was very cheap. So when it comes to just supplies that we actually depend on, yeah, it is extremely useful to have Cuba as a country that can actually supply us with, for example, sugar. And at the same time, because we are a big consumer of sugar, they're getting rich off of our sugar consumption, which at the end of the day does save the Cuban people. So we are happy because we're getting sugar at a very cheap price, and Cubans are happy because they're finally making real money again. And that's just sugar. I'm not even talking about tobacco and everything else I just said. So what he just said was just retarded, because it ignores the fact that Cuba is a very rich country, and it was rich before Fidel Castro destroyed it, and they can become rich again. So again, they're just ignoring who Cuba was before communism took over. They're acting as if Cuba was always communist when it wasn't. Cuba was at some point before, I forgot what it was. I don't know if it was, it's been 67 years. So whenever it was that Fidel took over, I don't remember it was in the 60s or the 50s, but before that time when Batista was in power, Cuba looked like Miami. Cuba literally looked like Miami Beach. So no one can sit here and look at me with a straight face, or any Cuban with a straight face, and say that it is not beneficial for the Cuban people or for Americans for Cuba to be free again. It's just historically misleading and misguided and dishonest. Mainly dishonest, because these are quote unquote historians. They should know very well that there was a Cuba before Fidel Castro. So let's continue.
The same video?
Yeah, same video. There's a thing that he says there that I wanted to react to. And after
go
that,
back and do what they want to do in Cuba. Of course, there's really no idea there about why that's a goal of the United States, what form of government the Trump administration wants to see there, how
figure it out.
that form of government should come about.
We'll figure it out.
Certainly, if the Cuban government is simply squeezed to collapse, there'll be a
As it should, 'cause
catastrophe
it's communist.
as a result of this policy. One of the results, of course, would be a massive influx of Cuban immigrants into America, something that you can't really imagine being a selling point under the MAGA platform.
If that's
I'm
the
not sure if
case,
they really
there
care
wouldn't
about
been
that contradiction
there wouldn't
or
be
not.
anybody in Cuba right now.
But it's
So-
very confusing as soon as you get past the sort of typical status quo cliches about, and I would say neocon cliches, that even Trump is saying about bringing freedom to an island under communist rule, et cetera.
Yep. And Noah, in that clip, Trump said that they're engaging with the Cubans at the highest levels. You've spent a lot of time, you and Brendan both spent a lot of time with Cuban officials in the last,
look at that. Cuban
week
officials,
plus.
so they are communist.
Cuban officials publicly have said there are no talks going on.
Correct.
What is your understanding
that's
about
called lying.
this explicit
Why would
assertion
you
from
believe
Trump
a
that
communist?
he's in talks
That's all they know
with
how to do is
high-level
lie. They don't
Cubans,
believe
or
in
that
anything.
the U.S. is in talks with high-level Cubans?
It's a mystery. I think
It's Rubio. His high-level Cuban is Rubio.
Yeah, so they may be talking to some Cubans, but are they talking to representatives of the Cuban government? The Cuban government says no. The Cuban government has said,
of course you would believe
a
them,
senior
'cause
Cuban
you're a
minister gave an
communist.
interview to the Associated Press either yesterday or the day before, in which he emphasized, listen, we want to talk with the Americans. We are desperate to talk with the Americans.
I'm sure
we want
you-
to
I'm
make
sure
a deal.
they
We
are
want to
that
have
very
discussions.
desperate.
We want to figure out a way forward.
Because their power is
It's just
going
that the
bye-bye
Americans don't
very
seem to be
soon.
having those conversations, regardless of what Trump is saying. Now, is it possible that Trump is being led down a certain path by advisors who have a desired outcome of inflicting pain on Cuba and of trying to topple the government,
You
no
mean
matter what the
inflicting pain
cost?
on the government of Cuba? Yes,
it's possible.
we do.
Is it
We want
possible
them
that Trump
to
knows that he's
be in
lying? That's
very
also
mu-
possible.
a lot of pain.
I think what just seems extremely clear in this moment is that there aren't talks going on. I don't think that the Cubans
You don't
would have
know
any
that.
incentive to publicly say, we're not talking with them, or to say, like, we want to talk with them, but they're actually talking with them. It just doesn't make sense to me.
You don't make sense.
Put up, and we can add this in post. Speaking of Cubans, Maria
This
Elvira
is
Salazar,
our
is a
congresswoman,
Cuban-American
guys.
congresswoman from South Florida. I want to read what she said on Twitter recently, and then get your response to it based on the conditions that you've seen. So she writes, because this is really an extraordinary statement that she put out, and you'll see why as I read it. She says, "The hour of Cuba's freedom has arrived.
Can you read that
Today
really
we have
quick?
a president."
I don't want to hear his communist voice. They're all commies. Anybody who is justifying communism to stay is a communist. I don't give a fuck what you think. If you want communism to stay in a country, you are a communist yourself by default. Because anybody who wants freedom would not be justifying communist leadership in any country. Any country. All right, read that for me, please.
The hour of Cuba's freedom has arrived. Today we have a president and a secretary of state determined to cleanse our hemisphere of tyrants, drug traffickers, and dictators. But the exile community also bears a historic responsibility to stop giving oxygen to the dictatorship. Because every dollar, every trip, and every gesture of false normalcy prolongs the life of a criminal regime and condemns the Cuban people to another 60 years of misery, repression, and slavery. This is the moment to stop everything. No more tourism, no more remittances, no more mechanisms that continue to finance and sustain the dictatorship. And yes, I understand. It's devastating to think about a mother's hunger, a child who needs immediate help. No one is indifferent to that pain. But that is precisely the brutal dilemma we face as exiles, to alleviate short-term suffering or to free Cuba forever. Exactly.
Yeah.
We can no longer continue being hostages of a regime that even from exile forces forces us to finance our own oppression. In the regime's final hour, the exile community must choose freedom.
Yeah. 110%. So you can go put me back on. I just wanted to get to that point. So I agree with her 100%. And I'm sure that a lot of people are like, you are evil. How dare you? You are Cuban. How can you possibly think that it's okay for people to, suffer even more than they're already suffering? At the end of the day, the only reason why people are suffering is because of the government that is making them suffer. So in order to stop the suffering and to stop the bleeding, you have to actually remove the bullet from the body, or remove the parasite, remove the virus, whatever the case might be. Whatever the reason is why they are suffering, and that is, in this case, the government itself, you need to actually get rid of the root cause, which is the government of Cuba. If you truly believe that those people should not deserve to suffer, if you truly believe that they shouldn't be suffering, then you should understand that as of right now, they have to suffer to remove the government that is causing the fucking suffering. It is that simple. We cannot assume that, it's not okay for them to suffer right now, but they're suffering because of the government. That's why they're suffering. It's not because of us. It's because of the government. So if you really believe that those people in Cuba should not be suffering, then you should completely comprehend that the government needs to be utterly destroyed. It needs to end. It needs to free the actual Cuban people. My father's a Cuban exile. Like, this is personal to me. This is really, really, really personal to me. So I really don't care what people think. You can call me a neocon. You can call me whatever the hell you want. At the end of the day, I believe Cuba should be free. I believe people should be able to go back to the country that they were born in. I don't think it's okay for me to never have seen, for my father to never have seen his father again. And his father died and he never was able to see him. That's just not okay. People don't deserve that. People don't deserve to literally be raised in oppression, leave the oppression, and then because they left family behind, they're unable to go back to their family because the government says that you are a traitor to the government that oppressed you. And people have the audacity, these people have the audacity to say, it's Americans that are the problem. It's the American government that's the problem. No, it's the government of Cuba that's the problem. Because thanks to the government of Cuba, both my grandfathers died because they weren't able to get the proper medical treatment because they didn't have any, because there were no resources for it. And that's why they died. They could have lived a little longer and they couldn't. My father wasn't able to see he wasn't able to be there for the fucking funeral, for crying out loud. So I don't care what you call people like me who want this government to die. You can call me whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. But at the end of the day, the objective is very simple. I want the people of Cuba free. And if that means short-term suffering for long-term actual freedom, so be it. And with that said, I am done, ladies and gentlemen. There's a show that I want to watch that is called the Bad Bunny halftime show. Not because I like Bad Bunny. I can't stand him. I think he is extremely low vibration. I believe music is it's one of the easy ways that evil can penetrate the mind. And if you are not connected to your mind and body and you're not a conscious observer, you allow that type of demonic penetration. And that sounds bad, but that's what it is. Because you allow the energy to, if you listen to the music and you accept it, you're allowing it within you. And energy is everything. Vibration is everything. And we are made up of water. So I personally believe that we need to be more aware of the music we listen to. The only reason why I'm listening to Bad Bunny is because I believe that his performance tonight is probably going to be satanic. There's probably going to be a lot of symbolism within the actual performance, and I want to react to it live. Well, not live, but I want to react to it literally in the moment and post about it on Instagram. So follow me on Instagram, Mayor_Truth. Follow me on X. Follow me on TikTok. If you are a truth seeker, if you are a conscious observer, follow us on MB Elevate on Instagram. Become a Patreon. Stay true to yourself, and I'll see you guys next time.